What's up everybody, back at it with some more Dragonflight Beta content, and this time we're taking a look at the shiny, new and improved Havoc Demon Hunter. And don't you worry, Chaos Strike is still there. Anyways, I'll be going over what's been added, what's been gutted, and my overall thoughts on the new talent trees. Keep in mind that this is beta testing, so a lot of things can change. So let's get into it, starting with the Havoc tree. Now there's some really interesting talents here, to the point where it's hard to get all the good stuff you'd actually want for different builds, and potential builds that comes to mind is often stopped by how the tree is formed currently. That being said, what you can do with the tree is still pretty insane, and there's a lot of fun interactions and potential for a lot of late game scaling that isn't dependent on stacking verse. Now on one side of the tree you have more AoE talents centered around throw, glaive and immolation aura, focused on dishing out as much AoE damage as possible, whereas the other side of the tree is more focused around good old Chaos Strike spam. So going down the right side of the tree we have Fellfire Heart, increases duration of Immolation Aura. Burning Hatred, Immolation Aura generates an additional 80 Fury over 16 seconds. Helps a ton to fuel the spam without having to actually press Demon's Bite. Then there's Furious Throw. Throw Glaive now costs 25 Fury and throws a second glaive at the target. Now this might not look like much at first, but when combined with other talents it sure makes a difference. Then there's Growing Inferno. Returning from Shadowlands, Immolation Aura's damage increases by 15% each time it deals damage. And Burning Wound, Demon's Bite and Throw Glaive leaves an open wound on target's hit, and they take 45% increased damage by Immolation Aura, and this lasts for 15 seconds. And you can apply it by up to 3 targets, so sadly you can't dot an entire pack with this, but it does add a lot of Immolation Aura damage on cleave, and when combined with the next talent, Ragefire, it gets a little bit insane. Now everything here has kind of been leading up to Ragefire. Each time Immolation Aura deals damage, 50% of the damage dealt by up to 3 critical strikes is gathered as Ragefire. And when Immolation Aura expires, you explode and unleash all that stored damage to nearby enemies. Now this one does an absolute metric ton of damage due to how much damage Immolation Aura does on AoE, often doing more than your actual Immolation Aura overall. So you'll be throwing glaives to debuff targets with Burning Wound to increase your Immolation Aura damage to further fuel the Ragefire explosions. One downside to Ragefire that I noticed while doing some testing, if the packs die too fast you lose out on a lot of Ragefire damage, as Ragefire goes boom when Immolation Aura ends. So if you start on a pack with 8 mobs, but once it detonates there's only 3 targets left or no targets, that does strangely enough impact its value. So you shouldn't go AoEing critters with it. But most of the time this isn't an issue, especially not when you go into like bosses with AoE or M+. Now to tie in with the glaive throwing, we have Moarg Bionics, Serrated Glaive and Soul Rend. Now Moarg Glaive deals 25% increased damage for each enemy hit, and Serrated Glaive 2-point talent, enemies hit by Throw Glaive take up to 20% more damage from I-beams. And Soul Rend 2-point talent, glaive causes targets to take an additional 120% of their damage dealt as chaos damage over 6 seconds. Now you can also spec into even more glaive stuff on your class tree to increase amount of charges and targets hit. So anytime you throw a glaive you throw 2 and both bounce to 2 additional targets. Applies Burning Wound dot, Soul Rend dot, and then your Immolation Aura Ragefire slapped on top of that, while also debuffing targets hit by your glaive to take more damage from I-beam. So there's a ton of synergy between all of this. Now to further improve this, we have any means necessary. Your mastery now also causes your single school magic damage to be dealt as chaos damage instead. Most noticeably Immolation Aura and the Hunt. So this sends Immolation Aura into overdrive on AoE and gives our mastery a ton more value, especially again on AoE. More mastery, more chaos damage, more Immolation Aura, more Ragefire, you get the picture. Now adding in the center of our tree we have more AoE things and I-beam talents. So let's take a look at the I-beam stuff. Like Chaotic Transformation, when you activate meta, the cooldown of Blade Dance and I-beam reset, and looks can kill. I-beam always crits. Blind Fury 2-point talent, I-beam generates up to 40 Fury every second and its duration is increased by 50%. And then there's Furious Gaze, when you fully channel I-beam you gain 10% haste for 12 seconds. But then there's Restless Hunter and Inner Demon. Restless Hunter, leaving demon form, grants a charge of Fel Rush and increases your next blade dance damage by 50%. And Inner Demon? Enter Demon form causes your next Chaos Strike to unleash Inner Demon, which slaps your target and deals damage to it and all nearby enemies. Both of these are great, and it can be further improved by Demonic in our class tree, making us enter Demon form after each I-beam, so tons more of these procs, great value. Then there's Cycle of Hatred. Blade Dance, Chaos Strike, and Glaive Tempest reduces the cooldown of I-beam by 1 sec, once again adding so much more value to the Restless Hunter and your Inner Demon. And then, the pinnacle of it all, the aptly named Shattered Destiny. The duration of your active demon form is extended by 0.1 sec per 7 fury spent, making it so Restless Hunter and Inner Demon are pretty much dead talents. Luckily, you only have to spec into one of these to get Shattered Destiny, so only one dead talent, at least. Disregarding that weird part, it's otherwise a ton of fun to play with all of the I-beam and demon form talents, as you pretty much have 100% uptime on meta, as you'll both be extending it as well as reducing cooldown on I-beam to further extend this. Furthermore, we have additional choices to make when it comes to AoE and single target builds as well, which is Glaive Tempest or Fell Barrage and Father to the Flame or Elysian Decree. For those of you who haven't played around with these, Glaive Tempest, 20 sec cooldown, you throw your demonic glaives on the ground, deal a ton of chaos damage over 3 seconds to all nearby enemies, reduce damage beyond 5 targets. Or you have Fell Barrage, 1 minute cooldown, does even more damage to all enemies within 8 yards of you and has reduced damage beyond 8 targets. Now overall, Glaive Tempest does a metric ton of damage over the course of, say, a dungeon with constant AoE and cleave. Fell Barrage potentially scales better with really heavy AoE or when you need on-demand burst AoE or damage. Then there's Father to the Flame and Elysian Decree returning from Shadowlands. Father to the Flame, your damaging abilities have a chance to summon a demon for 25 seconds. Throw Glaive deals lethal damage to this demon, and when it does, it deals a ton of damage to nearby enemies, heals you for 25% of your max HP, and it deals reduced damage beyond 5 targets. And this demon also spawns a demon soul upon death, which increases your damage done by 20% for 15 seconds. So not only does this do a ton of damage by itself on AoE, it also increases all your other damage. However, RNG is still RNG, so might not proc when you do want it, and vice versa. I mean, it feels better when it procs at the start of a pack rather when there's 2 mobs left on 10%. Now this also works extremely well on single target, as 20% damage increase is still a lot of damage even if the detonation value goes down just a bit. Then there's Elysian Decree, 1 minute cooldown, you throw a Curian sigil at the targeted location, after 2 seconds it detonates, deals a ton of damage and shatter up to 3 lesser soul fragments for you to nom on. The choice here really is, do you want reliable burst damage that you control? Go Elysian Decree, otherwise Father to the Flame, or you might choose neither. Bum bum bum. Now as I mentioned earlier, it really all boils down to what we can fit, as the current tree is a bit wonky with its pathing at best. Now if we move on to the left hand side of things, we have more Chaos Strike, single target, fury building, bouncy around talents to fuel a never-ending Chaos Strike spam without the need for stuff like Demon's Bite. Who wanna press that anyways? Like Demonic Appetite, Chaos Strike has a chance to spawn a lesser soul fragment, and consuming soul fragments grants 30 fury. Can be combined with stuff like Elysian Decree. Critical Chaos is a 2-point talent. The chance that Chaos Strike refunds 20 fury is increased by 25% per point. Gotta spend fury to make fury. Initiative, damaging an enemy before they damage you increases your critical strike chance by 15%, and using Vengeful Retreat refreshes your potential to activate this. So anytime you bounce away with Retreat, you'll be able to again proc this on a target for 15% crit, which ties in nicely with Unbound Chaos. 2-point talent, activating Immolation Aura increases the damage of your next Fell Rush by 500%. So you bounce away with Retreat and then slam back in with a 500% damage increased Fell Rush. Go synergy! Now what would all of this be without Tactical Retreat and Momentum? Now Tactical Retreat, Vengeful Retreat, has a 5 sec reduced cooldown and generates 80 fury over 10 seconds. Momentum, Fell Rush, The Hunt, Vengeful Retreat increases your damage done by 10 for 5 seconds, and multiple uses extends this buff. There's also a talent called Isolated Prey to further improve this on single target, which empowers Chaos Nova, I-beam, and Fell Rush when they only hit one target. So Chaos Nova stun is increased by 2 seconds, I-beam damage by 30%, and Fell Rush generates between 25 and 35 fury. So again, you hop away with Vengeful Retreat gives you 15% crit for 5 seconds the next time you slap a target, as well as 80 Fury over 10 sec, then you slam back in with Empowered Fell Rush, which deals 500% increased damage, and you also gain between 25 to 35 rage from it, while also simultaneously getting momentum. Hey ho, holy synergy. Granted, I haven't played Havoc Demon Hunter a lot whenever momentum builds have been the meta choice, so to speak, but I was never a fan of it before. This time around, it's a lot more fun on single target due to all of that synergy, and being able to fuel the chaos spam and set up tiny burst windows with some of the soon to be mentioned cooldowns. So following this, we also have Chaos Theory, Know Your Enemy, and Essence Break. Limit Break? Chaos Theory, Blade Dance causes your next Chaos Strike within 8 seconds to have a 14 to 30% increased crit chance and will always refund Fury. Now for a single target build, on top of these, you'd also most likely spec into all of the Blade Dance talents. Know Your Enemy, 2-point talent, gain critical strike damage equal to up to 100% of your crit chance, adding insane value to crit, which further increases the value of the earlier talent Critical Chaos. And to tie the Chaos Strike spam all together, we have Essence Break. 40 sec cooldown, you slash all enemies in front of you for a ton of chaos damage and increase their damage taken by Chaos Strike and Blade Dance by 100%, allowing you to set up a big burst window every 40 sec, proccing all your movement talents into Essence Break and Chaos Spam. It's a very different playstyle from the AoE build, and they both work decently in their opposite field, meaning pure single target build still does decent AoE and cleave damage, but a ton more single target and vice versa. But you're not dead weight in AoE if you go single target, and you can swap around some talents to gain an extra burst cooldown here or there, depending on encounter. Now apart from this, you have talents like Insatiable Hunger or Demon Blades. The age-old question, do I or do I not want to press Demon Bite? Now for single target, I'd wager the goal is to never have to press Demon's Bite, as you'd rather press Chaos Strike instead. And with all the Fury generating talents we have, Demon Bite will probably be the default here, or Demon Blade I mean. On AoE however, where we have less Fury generating talents, you might need Insatiable Hunger instead to sustain your glaives and blade dances. And Restless Onslaught. Chaos Strike has a 10% chance to trigger a second Chaos Strike. However, this one is in a weird spot on the talent tree, smack down on the AoE side, so it's pretty hard or it's impossible to pick it up for a single target build without losing a ton of other talents. And on AoE, you spend a lot less time pressing Chaos Strike, meaning you won't take it then either. Would make sense in my head when they built so many things that synergizes really well with each other for a Chaos Strike spam build to put this in a spot where you could actually use it, but I digress. Mortal Dance, adding a Mortal Strike effect to Blade Dance, Fell Eruption for single target stun, Netherwalk for an immune, or Desperate Instinct for a better blur defensive. Now going over to our class tree, we have a few talents that can impact our AoE or single target builds, like Sigil of Flame and Flames of Fury. Sigil of Flame deals damage and leaves a dot on target's hit, generates 30 Fury, helping out with our Fury gain on both single target and AoE. And Flames of Fury just adds more Fury generation to Sigil of Flame. Then there's Aura of Pain, 6% increased critical strike chance on Immolation Aura, synergizes well with Ragefire, or you could take Fell Blade for more Fury generation if needed on single target, for example. Demonic for I-Beam, Demon Form, or Demonic Origins, meta now grants 10% verse, and its cooldown is reduced by 60 seconds. And there's also Rush of Chaos, which also reduces meta's cooldown by 60 seconds, so one could make a 2-minute man out of me? Metamorphosis, which could be the play on certain encounter if there's a fight centered around big bursty windows around the 2-minute marker. It's hard to say, but it's in the hands of the tuning gods. Demonic just feels a tad too nice to play with. One could say Demonic is iconic. We also get the Hunt back, another Shadowlands power. 1.5 minute cooldown, you charge your enemy, striking them, dealing a big chunk of damage, and applies a dot to your target and any enemies in your path when you charge at him. Can be further improved by Unnatural Malice or Fey-empowered Elixir. Unnatural Malice increases the dot damage by 30%, and Elixir, the Hunt's cooldown is reduced by 12 seconds whenever an enemy is killed while the Hunt's dot is still on them. So if there's a fight with tons of ads, or throughout a dungeon, if you can snipe them with the Hunt and make sure they die during the dot, you get tons of value from Elixir. And if you need a chunkier cooldown or there's no ad, well then Unnatural Malice. Furthermore, we have an internal struggle. Flat 3.6 6% mastery increase. And Collective Anguish, I-Beam summons an allied Vengeance Demon Hunter, casts Fell Devastation on your target, adding a little bit more value to your I-Beam on AoE and more value to Cycle of Hatred, which reduces I-Beam cooldown. We also have a few Sigil empowering talents, which reduces Sigil cooldown and increases their uptime, which can be paired with Sigil of Flames and Elysian Decree. But mostly I'd say they're here for the utility side of things if we do need those sigils. So going into the utility side of things, it's safe to say they don't want us to die on AoE. As we have, for example, Charred Warblades, you heal for 5% of all fire damage dealt. Unsure if this is intended to work with the talent Any Means Necessary, which turns Immolation Aura into chaos damage. It seems to work off of that right now, and it does work on Ragefire as well. Regardless, you get a ton of passive healing from this. Combined with, for example, Soul Rending, Leech is increased by 10%, 20% during Demon form, which also translates to a metric ton of healing during Demon form, which is, well, always. And then the Hunt's healing on top of that, so yeah, moving from fire on the ground is kinda optional. Feels more like a suggestion. It's like, oh cool, you're here, you do you. Unless they tune us down to the ground so we slap for less than the wet noodle I found in my sink the other day. But apart from that, we also have access to Sigil of Mystery and Silence if we need that, which is pretty insane to be fair, especially for dungeons, adding a ton of AoE stopping power. And like I said, you can talent into Sigil CDR and increase duration. And a talent called Mystery and Defeat, you deal 20% increased damage to enemies for 5 seconds after Sigil of Mystery ends on them, adding a burst damage component to your Sigil, which I mean could be useful in M+ for huge pulls, as you'll most likely use Sigil of Misery anyways for the AoE fear disorient part. Now you also have things like increased range on Disrupt, gain 30 fury when you interrupt, gain 20 fury when you dispel a target, increased movement speed from Mastery, Chaos Nova, and either making Chaos Nova's cooldown 20% shorter and cost 50% less fury, or each target stunned by Chaos Nova has a chance to generate soul fragments for you to eat, and Darkness with either 2-minute less cooldown on it, so down from 5 to 3 minutes, or so that Darkness lasts 3 seconds longer, depending on when you need or if you need it. And that's pretty much it for all of the major stuff for Havoc Demon Hunter. All in all, the trees are good, a lot of the talents are extremely fun to play with, synergizes really well depending on builds you go for, and it feels like we have 2 cookie cutter builds, one revolving around Throw Glaive and Immo Aura, and the other around Fury Regen and Chaos Spam plus bouncing around. My biggest gripe with the Havoc tree is, as I've mentioned before in the video, it's got weird pathing in some places and some talents that synergizes poorly and you're forced to take them depending on build. The biggest one being Restless Hunter and Inner Demon, which proc when you enter and leave demon form, and you're forced to take one of them to be able to get Cycle of Hatred, which extends demon form and makes the aforementioned talents into crap when you play demonic. And without demonic, well, their value is crap since you won't get the demon form often. And then there's Relentless Onslaught that's way on the AoE side of things, locked behind Serrated Glaives. And Serrated Glaive increases I-Beam damage when we throw glaives, something we don't want to be doing in a Chaos Strike spam build. And it would also mean losing out on Chaos Theory, Trail of Ruin, and Isolated Prey, or Blind Fury and one of the other. To get it, we should be able to sustain without Blind Fury, but then we're still stuck with 2 Serrated Glaive talents with even less value due to removing Blind Fury. So, I mean, there's no good way of incorporating this in a Chaos Strike build, and you don't want to use it for AoE. That being said, do not get the wrong idea. Those issues beside, the spec is so much fun, currently insanely strong. Now, this is beta, so tuning is not done, and I suspect this will be tuned down just a smidge. But regardless of that, it's still tons of fun, tons of buttons to press, a lot more tools in our toolkit as far as damage, DPS, cooldowns, defensives, and utility goes. I mean, we're an absolute powerhouse on AoE, unless the mobs die too fast. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the new revamped talent trees for Havoc Demon Hunter. Let me know in the comments what you'd like showcased next. Any thanks? And what do you think of the new talent tree for Havoc? Anything you're hyped over or dislike, or anything weird in the tree you've found? Let me know. Don't forget the usual stuff, like, comment, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. It really helps me out. I stream progression and testing on Twitch, Thursdays, Sundays, and whenever raid testing is up during beta. Make sure to check out my Patreon if you want to help support me, my work, and my goal of upgrading my computer before Dragonflight. I also encourage you to check out the Liquid Women in Warcraft Discord for a supportive and safe Warcraft community. I'll link it in the descriptions below. Thank you all for watching. watching, and I will see you next time.